Welcome to Inside Seaweed. This is the podcast where we talk about the incredible world of seaweed and how this growing industry is bringing innovation and solutions to address climate change and the environmental crisis. My guest today is Joost Wouters, entrepreneur, speaker, author and CEO of the Seaweed Company. Joost's career started at two large multinational corporations and took a very different direction when he started a management consulting firm of his own. In 2018, he then founded the Seaweed Company with the purpose of contributing to a livable future for the generations to come. I wanted to keep this intro nice and short because I had a really nice conversation with Joost, which we started by unpacking the milestones of his career and the motivations that led him through those steps. So without spoiling any of this fascinating story, please enjoy my conversation with Joost. Joost, welcome to the show. It is great to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Where are you based at the moment?
At the moment, I'm based in Schiedam, which is a city close to Rotterdam in the Netherlands.
In preparing for this interview, I've learned a bit about your story and found some really interesting elements in it, many of which I have to say I could strongly relate to. So I don't usually ask this, but could you maybe go through the steps that took you to becoming a seaweed pioneer? And please, feel free to go as far back as you like, including your childhood, for example, if that is anywhere, anything that is relevant.
Yeah, childhood is probably less relevant, but I can start with
as far as back if you like.
Yeah. Because as far where I can see that it starts becoming a kind of a pattern is from the moment I started studying. I studied mechanical engineering at the Delft University. And always with the idea that I thought that a technical background is a good base to have. Maybe not so much to work in that area, in that field, but it makes you kind of, relaxed when it's about abstract things or about formulas or technology. And I think that's an important skill or experience to have. And the fact that I didn't do a lot with it is proven by my first professional career step. I started working for Procter & Gamble as a brand and account manager, selling diapers, shampoos, skin cream and all that, which was really good because that is actually where I mastered and learned the skill of sales and marketing. And I think that has proven very valuable over the rest of my life.
I can see that.
Couple of years later, about 5-6 years later, I was asked to join the management team of a soft drink company. And that was another extremely valuable experience, I have to say, learning about how to run the business as part of the director team, all the financial side. So I could even further explore into the sales and marketing knowledge that I learned at Procter & Gamble. That was a very interesting period in time as well. And then at some point in time, when my wife and myself got pregnant from our first boy, I decided to quit that job and start my own firm, my own business. That was actually quite a dream that I had for quite some time, that I want to be independent. That is something that is a line through my life. I wanted to be independent and resilient, not relying on any outside force in a way. So by becoming my own entrepreneur, starting my own business, I felt that was a way to do that.
Was it a strong urge that you had for a long time, do you think?
I think so. It was a little bit dormant, but it was an urge from myself and my wife. And she took that step a little bit earlier than I did. But at one point we decided to start together. And we started a management consulting, training and coaching company. And what we did is we worked with a lot of large multinationals, and we helped these organizations to, let's say, with their strategic plans, with their teams, and how to build vital and dynamic teams. So actually how to become more sustainable with the people that you have around. What I learned in the two American companies that I started working in is that they were quite hierarchical. And I noticed that, yeah, you are hiring people that are very smart and have a lot of ideas. If you put them in a very fixed structure, you won't get the full benefit of it in a way, and the full joy of it. So that's what we did for about 17 years.
Let me stop you there for a second, just to sort of go into that particular period and what was happening back then. So, if I understand it right, you had about 7 years in a corporate job for two different multinationals.
Mhm.
Um, did you feel it was somewhat atypical to move from a well-established career into, in the corporate world to becoming an entrepreneur?
Well, I think that it has to do with me, with my urge or my desire to become independent in a way. And so for me, it was very logical. Funnily enough, it's like some people ask me, like, how on earth are you leaving a well-paid, very well-paid corporate career to start an entrepreneur and step into the uncertainty of becoming an entrepreneur? But funnily enough, the moment you start to become an entrepreneur and realize that within a couple of years you have 10, 15, 20 clients,
Mm.
that feels much more stable and yeah, reliable than actually being employed by one company.
No, that's fair enough. In fact, let me ask you the opposite question. And this is going to sound like I'm grilling you or something, but it's really generally something I'm interested, because it's a question that I'm in a way trying to answer for myself. What kept you in your corporate career for as long as it did?
It was only 7 years, so that was not so long. What it was I think it was a logical move after my study at university. It was a logical next step to step into that world. And to be honest, without those 7 years in the corporate world, my life would have looked much different because I learned so much. The big corporates have a huge advantage as well. You can learn a lot that you can never learn if you become an entrepreneur. And it's like the combination of the two that makes it very interesting.
So do you feel that actually gave you some advantages
Oh, yes.
when you made the switch?
Yes, yes. Just look at from this perspective. I mean, how many coaches, trainers, and consultants are there out there? I mean, there are lots of people that say exactly the same things as I do, but the fact that
Yeah.
your background is different, you create a different listening. I even see that nowadays. Like if you can say that, yeah, my background is with some big sales and marketing corporations, then people listen differently, and yeah, rightly so or not, it is a fact.
It sounds like it helped in establishing your authority
Yeah,
in a way.
yeah, you could say it like that.
So, when you decided to then move into the seaweed industry,
Well, that was also part of that. So when we started our own company, we moved at some point in time. We moved to Spain to run our life from there, and we stayed there for 10 years. And what I noticed that over the years, that instead of only working with the teams, my work shifted more and more towards the impact that the organizations had. So I became a B Corp, and I started focusing on the environmental impact that companies had and organizations had. And I realized that organizations actually could play a huge role in, well, restoring the state of the planet when they wanted to, and if they were willing to change that.
hmm,
Well, what I realized as well after some years is that maybe they want to, but they are not able to change. Most companies are so fixed in their structure with their shareholders, etc., that I then decided to say, like, okay, I quit my company, my own company actually, and I start a new one. I want to have a tangible impact, as I call it
yeah,
myself, something that I can.
I sense a little bit of frustration. Maybe is that fair?
Yeah, I think in the end it turned a little bit into frustration. So you spend half a year, three-quarters of a year together with a team, with a management team of a company. And we came up with beautiful ideas how to make the company more sustainable, more future-proof. And then you turn your back and you see they say like, yeah, in the end, the shareholders don't want this or they don't like this. So it's a little bit, I
Mm,
thought like if I can only spend my time and energy on one thing, And my time and my energy are my biggest assets. Money is just nothing in a way. It's like you can always earn it or lose it. But time you can only lose in a way if you don't spend it right. So that's
Mm.
also like a line in my life. I've always done the things that I feel I wanted to do at that moment. I never stayed longer in any activity if I didn't like it anymore. I thought it's a waste of time and energy.
Mm.
So that is something that, yeah, at one point showed up and I said, I really want to have tangible impact. And what I
Mm.
did then is because I didn't have a clue how and in what area is that I just went through my LinkedIn list and I invited myself for with people that I knew and I said like can I invite myself for a cup of coffee or lunch and I want to hear what you're doing. And it was those were people that were working in, let's say, solar panels or wind energy or battery storage, and that all sounded nice. But for me, those were already, let's say, almost commodity industries.
Mm.
And
Mm.
then one moment in time, someone introduced me to the concept of seaweed, and that was love at first sight. At first sight.
What made it different?
I don't know. I didn't know anything about seaweed actually, apart from knowing the stuff when I lived in Spain that was sticking in between your toes or in your in your hair when you were swimming. But it was
Was there an appeal for you, not knowing about it,
no,
not
but it
knowing
was the
anything about
sense of wow, this might be something. I quickly learned that seaweed might be an untapped resource in a way, and also when I learned about all the possibilities of seaweed, I started to wonder like this is interesting. I mean, if you can do so many things with seaweed, why don't I see it? Why in the Western world I don't see seaweed? Why is it not visible? Why
it? Mm.
why don't I hear about it? And that is what got me intrigued.
I see. What was your sort of personal mission at this point?
Well, when I left Spain with the determination, the commitment to support the life of the generations to come, the generations without a voice.
Yeah.
That was my drive. And seaweed fitted perfectly in that in a way. But that was my drive. I wanted to have something. I wanted to start an impact company, a company where you use the entity of a company to do good, to contribute, and to
Yeah.
have
Yeah.
everything that you do have a positive ecological, social, and economical impact.
So that's interesting. So now you're hooked on seaweed, shall we say, and you're looking into it and you're seeing all these things that can be done with seaweed. But then you look around and it's just not there.
Yeah.
Did you want to make it visible? Did you want to get it out there?
Yeah, well, you mentioned exactly two terms that I use myself. I was hooked on seaweed very quickly, but it took me 1.5 years of studying. So
Oh, wow.
I took 1.5 years of my time without any earnings, and I just jumped into the world of seaweed. I was reading a lot of papers. I was talking to a lot of people in the industry to understand why. Why is it that I don't see seaweed? And at one point in time, myself and two other partners, we decided to start the Seaweed Company and literally to make seaweed visible.
Right. What do you feel is the most important thing that you're doing at the moment to make seaweed visible?
At the moment, I think our biggest contribution is in trying to make seaweed visible is really pioneering and paving the path so seaweed can have a significant impact, can have a significant contribution to the world, can support the health and well-being of humans, animals, soils, and crops. And
Yeah.
and I'm very careful with this. I'm never positioning seaweed as the solution, as the silver bullet. I'm really aware that seaweed can be a contribution too. It can support the transition. But because it is relatively unknown, it's a fantastic means to tell new stories, to share new stories, and that is that I found pretty cool. It keeps me working on this day and night over the last 6 years already. Yeah.
So at this point, obviously you're not alone. You probably at this point, I'm sort of going back to when you started on after this year and a half of studying. You start presumably with farming, but what really the thing that I want to sort of look into it is you didn't start alone. You started to build a team. How did you go about that? How did you find your co-founders and how did you progress from there?
one of the things I learned in, let's say, my previous lives is that I know what my skills are, where I'm good at, and I also know where I'm not good at. So
Yeah.
I thought first thing that we need in a couple of things that we need if we want to start a solid business is I need someone, or I mean, we need someone that knows about seaweed. So I found my colleague Stefan Kraan, pretty well-known seaweed expert that is already working with seaweed for 38 years, lives in Ireland. We had a perfect match, and so that was an important element to the team. And my other colleague is Edwin Snekes, and Edwin is an expert in, let's say, operation financial side. So together we formed, I would say, the perfect team, very complementary, where we had the commercial and the vision side, the seaweed knowledge, and the operation on the financial side. So that's how we started.
Were these connections that you had before, or you just went out and looked for these people?
We met in this 1.5 year, yeah, and all three we were looking for seaweed, so we found each other, and it was quite a match.
Nice. It's quite lucky, isn't it?
No, there is no luck in a way. It's like you when you're on the search for something, you know what you need or want, then you find it on your way. That's
Mm. Was it a lot of work to? What I'm trying to sort of imagine is if it was a very active proposition from yourselves to go out there and find the right people. If we take luck out of the equation, you find that you were very active in looking for these guys.
Actually, it's funny that you asked that, but it's not. I mean, it was not so much that I was looking for specific skills or so, or that Edwin
Hmm.
or Stefan were looking for specific. It was almost that the seaweed company had to be founded. It was something that had to happen, and that it was looking for three crazy people, committed people that were willing to do that, to take on that job. That is how it feels. The whole journey of the seaweed company feels all the time, and that's
Yeah,
completely different than starting it with a pre-fabric idea about I should have this, I should have that. It was more realizing like, hey, we are a complementary team, and maybe there was a fourth person that we could have joined, and we didn't meet him or her yet. That was also a possibility, but it's more like that.
I see. Okay. So moving on to now, then, what are the key areas that you guys focus on at the moment? What made you choose them?
Yeah, so right now, as we speak today, we have about 35 to 40 people in the Seaweed Company
Yeah.
running around. And a couple of things. So when we started, we realized a few things. One is, and it was an answer to the question, why is seaweed not visible? We noticed a couple of elements. One, either you found people in the world, let's say outside of Asia, that were working on seaweed, but they were mainly geographically fixed and they were growing one species.
Uh-huh.
So every season they were almost looking for how do I get rid of this pile of seaweed,
Hmm.
mainly brown seaweed, that I have accumulated over the last season, and I don't have a market for it, or I have a limited market because I only have one species. On the other side, we found people with pretty cool ideas that needed seaweed, but they didn't have any access to seaweed.
Hmm.
So we thought if we want to start off a business or an industry, actually, we need to be vertically integrated or horizontally integrated, as you want to call it. So we need to be responsible for the beginning, the creation, and the propagation of seaweed base
Hmm.
material up to the development of products that are ready to sell in the market. So that's what we did. The other thing we notice is that if we want to offer a portfolio of valuable products,
Yeah.
then we do need multiple species. We need to combine the red, brown, and greens to combine the bioactive ingredients, to combine the benefits, and come to optimal solutions. So in our products, we make blends of 4 or 5 different species. So that means that we need more locations to grow the seaweed, because as you all know, probably that all those species don't grow around
Hmm.
in your backyard. So they grow on different species. So we started our company with farming in Ireland. Pretty soon after that, we went to Morocco, and we went to India, to the Netherlands. We're now starting in Greenland.
Oh wow.
So yeah, we have and many more places on the radar. So yeah, that's on the farming side. On the, let's say, the downstream part, so the product development part, we also have a different approach there. So we focus on two concepts. We call it blue farming and blue health. where we either support farmers in the transition towards regenerative agriculture and sustainable farming, and we support humans in their transition towards a more sustainable diet.
Okay.
And I can share much more about that. So, but
Yeah, I mean, if you want to maybe give a bit more details on these two elements.
so what you see on the blue farming side is that we distinguish two areas. One is the crops and soils, and the other is the farm animals. So one of the products that we make out of our seaweeds is a biostimulant. And when you use that on your soil or on your crops, farmers see a lot of benefits. They see much richer soil, soil that holds much more water, so that it needs less irrigation, which absorbs more soil organic matter. Therefore, over time, the farmer needs actually less inputs whilst maintaining the output. We just recently finished a field trial, and we reduced the amount of pesticides and fungicides and herbicides with 25%, whilst maintaining exactly the same output. Well, this is just mind-blowing. This is just fantastic.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. The same with animals. So we make supplements out of seaweed, we make blends. And what we see there is that it supports animals in their immune system. If an animal needs less energy to support its immune system, it can either use that energy to improve its performance. Well, I have to say that currently farm animals are almost pretty much up in their performance. So we rather see that they need less energy, so less feed for the same performance. And that has a huge impact in the whole carbon chain up to the, let's say, the cutting of forests to grow soy in the Amazon. So that's on the blue farming side. On the blue health side, we mainly focus on hybrid products, so hybrid meat products. Let's say we could replace with our seaweed blend, we replace up to 40% of meat products, let's say hamburgers. And that has a huge impact as well. Huge impact. So just imagine 100-gram hamburger with our blend in it has avoided 13 kilograms of CO2, 340 liters of water, and 25 square meters of land that has not been used to grow crops that was normally fed to the animals that ended up in the hamburger. So also there, from an impact perspective, huge impact, and that's what we're after. So we're looking all the time, where can we have the biggest impact, and then start from there.
Yeah, if you think about how many burgers are cooked every day, I imagine
I don't have a clue. I know it's a lot.
It must be a lot.
Yeah.
I want to ask you a little bit about biorefining. It's a very interesting topic, and there's a lot that we don't know about. So maybe there's a bit of pattern there, which makes it interesting and appealing, and there's a lot of potential. When thinking about biorefining, what are, in your view, the challenges and opportunities?
That is indeed a very interesting area, and that is I think the area where we can really capture the value of seaweed. And I'm not talking about this, let's say, the traditional agar and carrageenan extraction. That is an area where we don't like to play a big role. But if you talk about other bioactives like fucoidan or even biostimulants, that's a very valuable proposition. That is where we see a big future for seaweed.
How do you see this area develop in the near future?
Probably it has to develop. One, from an economic perspective, because you can tap into the higher value propositions. Second, if your volumes of cultivated seaweed are growing, then one of the processing steps, drying, becomes a very challenging one, especially if you don't live in countries where the sun shines, like the Netherlands or Ireland or Greenland, where you can't rely on natural ways of drying. So you can do that up to a certain volume, but at one point that becomes way too expensive. I mean, the energy inputs are way too big. So ideally then you look into processing steps where you can put the raw biomass into the process and starts extracting things. So therefore
without drying, you mean?
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah.
Okay. Has the Seaweed Company focused on developing any biorefining methods or technologies?
No, on that side, we don't want to be, that's not our core business in a way. So we tap into existing existing technologies, or we co-develop them based with our knowledge with
Right.
partners that have experience on extraction methods, and then we make them specifically usable for seaweed.
Is there a need for further innovation in this area, do you think?
Yeah, I think so. Although you could say that if you look at what's the biggest challenge right now, and I still remember a meeting with Mark von Keitz. He was leading the US ARPA-E project a couple of years ago program, and he said something interesting when I had a meeting with him. He said the biggest challenge is for us is to get biomass, to get seaweed at a certain price onshore, at a price of about $100 per ton.
Mm-hmm.
That's the challenge. If we can manage that, then there are enough existing technologies that are already being used in agriculture or in other areas that we then can use for seaweed. I mean, in the end, seaweed is a biomass like any other plant or organism, with, of course, some very specific characteristics. Don't get me wrong there. I mean, it has very strong cells, which are very difficult to open, but the technology exists for that. So it's not the first time that engineers have to deal with these kind of challenges. So you can tap into existing technology, and yeah, there's always a need to do them smarter with less energy involved and more efficient. So yeah.
So it sounds like there's a lot we can do, but the struggle is to actually make it viable.
Make it viable, and what our point of view is that there is not enough seaweed. So I would really love to see more seaweed in the world, in outside of Asia again. I'm always saying outside of Asia. We split the world in Asia. 98% of all the seaweed is grown and cultivated there.
Yeah.
That means that outside of Asia, there's hardly anything, yet a lot of water. So that's where we need to focus on and create biomass that will then be used to capture the value out of it.
Yeah, at the right price then.
Yeah.
Do you think there is an underlying problem in, let's say, the West, Europe, for the seaweed industry to actually be profitable? Is there an obstacle there?
I'm not so sure. I think it will take some years to establish, because we need to establish both the production side of seaweed and the product development side of it. But
Mm-hmm.
it's very simple. Some people in the beginning, when I was exploring why seaweed wasn't visible, they said like, yeah, there is no demand, because if there would have been more demand, then I would grow more. And I said, no, that's bullshit. There is not enough seaweed, because if you just look at seaweed, if you look at the macronutrients, you see the proteins and the fibers and all that. Any processing industry knows what to do with that. But they need a certain volume to start a viable economic activity, and they need continuity. So if you just offer in May after your annual harvest one big pile of seaweed, then it's very hard to start an economic activity based on that, because I need it every month. So that's why we are looking into ways how we can preserve it by drying or fermenting it, and so we can offer it year round, even if it's a seasonal species. So on the other side, economic activities can take place based on an annual supply chain.
And you mentioned it's a matter of volume. Is it a matter of scale? How big does it need to be?
Oh, how big, I don't know, but it is much larger than it is right
Than what
now.
it is now.
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
right now, if you look at the amount of tons that are being cultivated, I think in Norway, if you look at Europe, in Norway, you have some of the older, bigger companies, and they correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that the largest ones, they produce 300 tons wet per year, 400 tons, let it be 600 tons wet per year. So if you dry it, it would be 60 tons or so per year. Right now, we are already shipping every month out of our farms in India 40 tons dry, and about 10 to 20 tons dry from Morocco. So that's per month, and it's still peanuts.
Wow.
It's peanuts. It's nothing.
Yeah,
It's nothing. You can do anything. I mean, you have 2 containers or 3 containers per month, which is nothing. So that needs to change. The mindset of what scale is in seaweed needs to change. That's why we are pioneers in the scaling up. And saying that, it's not scaling up in the, let's say, the traditional industrial way. Let's build some mega farms and scale up. Now we try to scale up with nature, within nature's boundaries. That means that in the countries where we have our farms, we work with local communities, with coastal fishing families. And along the coastline, we rather have 100 smaller farms where one family can manage that rather than having one big farm that runs in an industrial way. We really try to prevent and avoid all the mistakes that we're making on land, and so far we are managing that.
Let's switch gear for a second. I wanted to touch on something a bit different because I've heard you say something really cool in a recent interview that caught my attention. It was something about the fact that the way you started the company, you see it as a kind of platform more than a company.
Yeah.
What do you mean by that?
When we started the Seaweed Company, we defined 10, let's say, guiding principles for our company. And one of those was we work with nature, and the others, we were very transparent and open in everything we do. But also one was we want to be a company fit for the 22nd century. We want to look ahead. We make choices that are beneficial also for the generations to come, but we also organize our company in a way that fits much more at today's time. So for instance, all my colleagues are all owner of the company. Everyone is own shares in the company. They just get them. They don't even have to buy them. They get them. We have a foundation in the core of our company that has also shares, and this foundation has the veto right on any, let's say, decision we take that would be off mission. So if we, you can call it stewardship, we have that grounded in our, structured in our company. So let's say if someone comes or an investor comes or one of the founders said like, yeah, let's do this, then that foundation with a minority share could say like, no, we are against it because it's against our mission.
Mm-hmm.
And the other element of that would be that we see ourselves more like a platform than a company, traditional hierarchical company. That means that we share our knowledge very openly. We have webinars, we share our knowledge on internet, not the theory, but we first do it and then we share what we've done and what we've learned. We don't have the truth. We say always, we don't know anything. We don't have the truth. We don't know answers to all the questions, but we can only share what we have experienced, and so others can learn from that. And what we see is that a lot of people get attracted to that. So we get a lot of questions from people like, hey, I've got a concession in Sri Lanka or in Zanzibar and I don't know what to do, or an island, and could you help me with it? Could we start a cooperation? Or I have a cool product idea with materials in seaweed, could we join forces? And that is what we see as a platform. So yeah, we provide people that are interested with seaweed with one way or another to work together. And that means that we don't need to own everything. It doesn't have to be all owned by the Seaweed Company, but it's more like finding ways to cooperate and that both parties, both sides can have a positive effect of that, can win from it.
Do you find you normally look for these kind of collaboration, or
Never.
do they find you?
We never look for any. We don't never have vacancies, and we never look for corporations. The only thing that we need is a kind of platform where we can share our stories, like this one.
Yeah.
And what we see happening is that people where this story resonates will come to us with a certain proposition, and then we can work from that. So I really believe into we only want to work with people that are resonating on the same frequency. We will never convince people. I don't want to spend and lose energy on people that need to be convinced. If you need to be convinced, fine, go and convince yourself and wait a couple of years until you've woken up.
Do you find that gives you? This is gonna sound horrible, but does it give you a better group of people around you?
Of course. I mean, everyone that works in the Seaweed Company is hooked on seaweed. They bring in their own passion or own skill set. Let's say we have people that are with expertise on financial side or on supply chain or on IT, or on marine biology, but they're all hooked on seaweed, and that makes it so beautiful. But also our partners and our clients, and we say no to clients that are not adhering to certain principles. We say no to investments. We've said no to a lot of money because that was not the right money for us. So no, and that this gives you this resilience and independency. It's like, and sometimes it's very scary, of course, if you say no to, if you need money to grow and you say no to some investors. But in the end, in the long run, that will only make you stronger.
Nice. Thanks for that. So, linked to what we just said, do you feel there are enough opportunities in the industry for pioneers and innovators to collaborate, to compare notes, ideas, frustration, challenges, learnings?
What I think is needed is a step in more in professionalization here. And that is what I realized lately is that because we are asked a lot about advice and share notes and all that, and um, what we're trying to get to is to make also that step a bit more professional by also asking money for it. And why we're doing that is not so much. It's first of all, it is we have to justify the time we spend on it. I mean,
Mm,
if you grow like what we're doing, you catch a lot of attention. So a lot of journalists that want to make documentaries, students, etc., which is great. That's part of our journey. But then there are also companies and people that want to just want to get the knowledge. And I think if you take yourself serious, then you're also willing to pay for that. Just to give you an example, when we started a Seaweed Company, I said, and we wrote down our ambitions. I said, there's only one name that fits our company, and that is the Seaweed Company, not a Seaweed Company or whatever
mm.
Seaweed Company. It's the Seaweed Company.
Yeah.
And when I checked the domain names, that was still available, although it was bought by one of those domain
Yeah. Yeah.
pirates.
I see what it means.
And
Yeah.
I can
Yeah.
tell you the price was pretty steep. But that said two things to me. One, no one has been serious so far. And second, I'm happy that it's still available, and I'm really happy that we did, because right now our brand name is already proven extremely valuable. It ends up on products in stores. People start to cooperate with us, and that is what's needed. We need to step up, and we need to build the industry. So everyone that is interested in building seaweed, that's fantastic, and we need much more. But it's also not a. We need to get it out of the hobby area. Appreciating the value from both sides that you're providing, and instead of giving it away for free. And that some people get me wrong there, but I hope you understand what I say. It is like I think it will help us all in growing this industry towards clients and acceptance in the market.
Yeah. No, and I really I appreciate and understand your what you said about stepping up the level of professionalism and taking it away from this hobby cottage industry and going up a level.
Yeah.
That absolutely it's absolutely fair enough and needed. What I wanted to sort of understand. Well, let me ask you first. Do you think the industry needs people with the knowledge providing that service? I'm thinking, does the industry need consultants, for example?
You know, I have always have a double feeling about consultants unless they talk from experience.
Yeah,
So anyone who has read about it and gives advice, I would never buy advice from someone who has not done it. If it's on, let's say, financial side, if people, I give advice on this and this and this on these strategies, then I say, like, can you please share your bank account, your bank saldo with me? And if it's, why are you doing this? And if he's not financially independent, I will not take any advice. The same with if you would buy a car, and if it's from Max Verstappen, like Formula One, I would take his advice. If it's not, and that is the same with seaweed. So there are quite some consultants on this market, and some of them have a talk from experience, and that's great. But I would be very careful with people that have no experience and just take it from papers and hearsay.
absolutely. So, just to close the collaboration piece, do you think there is enough of that? Is there an argument to say that we could develop the industry faster and better if we weren't working in silos? Or actually, you think there is a lot of collaboration going on?
No, that's a good question. There's hardly any collaboration, and that was one of the things we noticed as well in the beginning when we studied the market. There is no industry, there's no competition, because competition implies scarcity, and there's no scarcity of seaweed. And yet, people that are working with seaweed treat everything very this is mine, and I'm not going to share information.
Exactly.
Now,
That's where I was going with it.
if you want to build an industry, you can compete on the front end. You can compete on, let's say, the areas of getting funding or all that. But on the back, you really want to cooperate. You really want to work together with the same suppliers. For instance, people that supply lines, ropes, and nets, or seeding machines or harvesting machines. Because if you want to grow an industry, you want that the providers and the suppliers also grow with you hand in hand. And right now, that's terrible. Everyone is treating it like, okay, I've invented something with a new dryer, and I mean, you're a seaweed company. You're not a drying machine expert. So having that knowledge doesn't give you any benefit at all. The only benefit that you want is that the market evolves, so more people know that seaweed is a potential, and then you can distinguish yourself with offering better quality or better service or nicer concepts or whatever, but not on the things that will never be your business. So a company that says like, yeah, I just invested in a new harvesting vessel, and I keep it secret. Yeah, that's just stupid. I think that is just blocking the speed.
Yeah, it's like an obstacle to innovation.
Yeah,
just by protecting.
and that is the attitude. That so far is that's the attitude. Everyone says, yeah, let's cooperate. At a conference, everyone shares and goes there and shares and shakes hand and exaggerates on the presentations where they are. But hardly any people share about their failures, about where they really are, and definitely also not about really sharing and cooperating. So yeah, we try to do that right now. So we're setting up some real partnerships with other companies to say, like, let's jointly develop and see how we can build a blueprint farm so other people can learn from that and implement that. Because in the end, we are interested in more seaweed. We need seaweed, and we don't need to do that all by ourselves. But we do want that it's grown in a certain way, that it's sustainable, traceable, certified, etc., so we can use it. So it would be very beneficial if more people would grow seaweed at certain standards.
In an hypothetical scenario in which you had the resources, I'm thinking unlimited people, unlimited money, what other areas or projects would you focus on?
I would love that situation. I would sign for it immediately. No, I think then, because speed and scale we are an impact company, so speed and scale is our most important thing. We realize all that we don't have the luxury to wait and be slow here. So if we would have unlimited resources, first of all, that the research would start with the financing part. I would love to hire everyone that is passionate about seaweed and want to contribute, because I feel very, very sorry for the people that want to contribute and don't find a way or a company or organization to do that. So and they also need financial support there. So that's where I would use the finances for. Then the second is we would map the world and say, okay, what are areas where we can have the biggest contribution on a social and environmental side? Where can we grow certain species that really add to the equation, and how can we ignite that?
Yeah.
And in that way, almost like duplicating those blueprints all over the world. Yeah.
Nice. I like that. All right. I'm conscious of time. I'm gonna close with another hypothetical question. People in the seaweed industry might not be aware of this, but you are the author of 2 books. I'm not sure if you've thought about this at all, but if you were to write another book now, what would you write about?
What a nice question.
Thank you.
I would write about reconnecting. I would write about what seaweed has done for me, being a means to reconnect with, let's say, the source, reconnect with the other living beings around us, to almost break down the barrier that humans have built between human beings and the rest of nature. And being completely aware that a lot of the things that we notice and see around us is coming from this disconnectedness, that we take the world for granted, that we extract more than we can give back, and let people wake up. So that would be my next book.
In what way seaweed reconnects you to Earth?
Well, every time I'm on a boat, in my canoe, or on a ship in Ireland or in Greenland or in India or Morocco, and I go with my hands through the wet stuff, the slimy stuff, the seaweed, I become very joyous. I become You see a lot of pictures of me where I put the seaweed on my head, where I'm playing with it, where I'm meditating. It's like, it is fantastic. It reconnects you, and or it connects you, not even reconnects you. Maybe it connects you.
That's
And seaweed
fantastic.
is just a very powerful organism to do that. And
Yeah.
there are more. I mean, I love to walk in the forest, and I hike in the mountains, and those are also areas. But the sea is something special because maybe it is so unpredictable and unknown. And if you put your head underwater and you see all this weed growing, and then it's like, it's marvelous. It's magic.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, for what it's worth, I would read the book.
Well, it might come sooner than
You never know. Joost, we're gonna have to wrap this up, but thank you very much for the time. It's been really nice to cover even some of your personal insights. So thanks for sharing that.
You're more than welcome.
Do you have any final message for the audience or a call to action?
Well, I don't know who's listening to this and if you're already into seaweed or not, or interested into seaweed or exploring. But I would say probably most of you already woke up to the potential of seaweed. But please, please, please don't have it only as a business opportunity. See it as the potential if you use seaweed or work with seaweed in the total scheme of things. So make sure that everything that you do with seaweed has positive social, ecological, and financial impact. It's all three. It's not either or. It's both, and yeah, and live to that. And I think if we can grow together the seaweed industry along those principles, and also speak to each other if we see different. So I'm very against, for instance, the devastating extraction of seaweed that is sometimes still called wild harvesting, which is just destroying the soils, and speak out to that and build a sustainable industry. I think we can avoid the mistakes we made on land, try to keep the people out with money and less morale, and yeah, work with nature in the ocean. And I think then we can enjoy the full benefits of seaweed altogether.
Does it go back, do you think, to business as a source of good?
Yeah, exactly.
Before we started recording, you mentioned a webinar you're working on.
Oh yeah, this is part of what we are sharing. We have on LinkedIn, we have a webinar series which is called the Seaweed Dialogues. We have information on Medium. We try to share all our knowledge and experiences there. So feel free to have a look there. And I assume that many more things are coming, maybe even a book.
Watch the space. Is there, you mentioned LinkedIn, is there any other website or media at all where people should go?
Well, our website, the website of our company is www.theseaweedcompany.com. And yeah, if you Google seaweed, then we will pop up probably pretty soon.
Fantastic. Thanks again. And thanks to you guys for listening. Take care.
Bye.